What's going on, everybody? Well, I'm here in my little garage area. I'm gonna make me a video here about Paracelsus. I don't know how far I'll be able to go with this. I'm definitely not an expert on the subject. I'm just trying to not inform people about Paracelsus, but rather to discuss some Paracelsian philosophy with you. Now, Paracelsus, I believe he lived in the 1500s. He was an amazing man. He resonates with me strongly. Many of the things that I believe to be true, or rather that I feel are true, are things that Paracelsus had believed as well, although I didn't know so until later. And you find that people coincide with your thinking patterns sometimes, and you think, oh, okay, so I'm not alone in this. So he believed that in his time it was the four elements. Now they realized that there's all the other elements, of course, gold, silver, platinum, but the four elements, which were, earth, water, air, fire, were what made up everything. That all things were made up of these four elements. That within us we have water, we have the fire that keeps us going, we have air, gas, and we're made of matter, earth. It's very simple thinking, but very complex implications, if you will. His theory, or rather his belief, was that what we call dimensional entities, or demons, or jinn, or in many cases aliens perhaps, that all of these were manifestations of a single element. So these beings would be single element beings, just like made of just fire or just water, yet in an elementary state which is out of our perception, if you will. Now, a person may say that's totally crazy to think that there's, beings that we can't see that walk among us. Although I would challenge a person to picture seeing a ball of light, right? A ball, what you might call ball lightning, okay? Now, if this ball lightning was infrared, it would still be light, but you wouldn't see it. If this ball lightning was ultraviolet, it would still be there, but you wouldn't see it. Because we don't see in those spectrums. They're just outside both ends of our visual spectrum, which is such a narrow band within the actual spectrum, which is like a sliver within a 1,000-mile line. It's very small. So all of these other vibrational rates or frequencies or wave states are out of our visual, auditory, feeling, and smelling. So basically these are things that our senses as we know them cannot pick up on. His theory goes that, of course, like many, that people can hone their abilities to sense these fields, yet the fields are always there. It's not that that the person can call upon these powers. It's that the powers are always there, the energy is always there. We can learn to tap into it, just like putting a siphon into a stream. Now, of course, a lot of folks don't believe in any of this, and that's just fine. My thought on this is that even though I'm a very rational person, I cannot say with certainty that things like demons, or at least negative energies, don't exist. I have to say that they must exist in some form. My belief is that it's one of the few things that I cannot prove that I believe, which is that there are energies that are conscious, so to speak, or take action one way or another that we cannot see and comprehend. And this may explain many of the things. For example, in the earth elements, this is what people would call leprechauns. Okay? And there were also what they call sylphs, I believe, that were the water entities. These were all these single, and they're metaphors. And here's the thing, for thousands of years people have been talking about these energies, these forces, these things. And a person can easily say, well, of course, they're just making up stories to explain their surroundings, their environment. The truth is they're not, because there's too many of them. I guess now, let me say they're not. I would say it's too interesting that we have this, at least this primal understanding of something that we all have seen, that many different cultures have seen. And a good example would be dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. When a person consumes DMT, they will see entities And many people across borders and cultures will all see these similar entities. They may be a reptilian or insectoid, sometimes plant-based creatures, which in fact seem to be, in my opinion, from the primal mind, as if you were seeing the primal mind. If you've ever seen the Godhead when you're in an intense psychedelic state, you'll know that there's absolutely no way to describe it. You see it, but you don't see it with your eyes. You see it with your mind's eye. And this is where you start to realize this is what the third eye is. The third eye allows us to see things that we cannot see with our other eyes, that we cannot feel with our bodies. And it's a very metaphoric thing. A lot of people talk about the pineal gland in the brain and how that might be. I don't believe that. I don't believe the pineal gland is really as relevant as people think. It's just a gland. It's just matter. It's earth. It's irrelevant. It's the etheric body that we're talking about here. This goes beyond biological functions. And of course I'm getting into total speculation here. A lot of people are rolling their eyes probably saying, dude, you believe in weird shit. And that's fine. But I think it's very important to me to realize where these ideas come from and where some of these stories come from, because I believe they hold some credence. So back to Paracelsus, he believed that we have actually manifested. Just a sec. Yeah, buddy, I'm making a video. I'll be right in just a minute. But Paracelsus believed that, and this was the one part that I'd already considered, but I hadn't actually come to my own really any conclusions on, was that all the demonic entities that people encounter, the possessions, the negative vibes, ghosts, all these things are created by the individual, okay? That the individual creates these things himself. And it's through this action of conjuring, if you will, you might call it conjuring, without maybe even knowing what a person's doing. And when people have a lot of negativity in them, people say, they have bad spirits or bad juju, and what it is what the theory goes that people do create non-material things with their non-material energies using their thought patterns or thought form. And the idea is whether thought holds weight or not. And I won't, I'm not here to try to prove or disprove anything, so I won't go into the details, but the idea is that your thoughts actually can manifest reality, whether it is through your action or even through some mechanism that's unknown still to us. And that they say that the person who has the ghosts around them or the demons or whatnot, that they cannot push them onto another person, but the other person can allow themselves to be infected, if that makes sense. But if the person comes in contact with another person, it's just like an illness, and this is why we feel bad vibes, right? And you can get sick just from a bad mental state or from being around somebody who's unhappy or unwell, and not because of any virus. This is the most interesting thing, is that viruses, bacteria, these things are in us constantly. Cancer, everything. Our bodies are just loaded with diseases all the time. We're constantly exposed to shit everywhere we go. What is it that triggers you to get ill? And people will say, well, it's just a weakened immune system. But from what? What weakens your immune system? Sometimes it's not something so simple. It's very subtle. Thought patterns can cause you to be ill. Having negative thoughts can put you in a panic state. Everybody knows that if you've ever had severe anxiety, sometimes you just get sick because you don't feel well. People who are depressed tend to be sick all the time. And therefore, you are manifesting a physical response to a mental thought pattern. But it may be more complicated because that mental problem may be caused by physical stress too. So it's the mind-body connection. It's just an intertwined thing. And, I've given up on trying to really explain or dispute it. When people just say, well, when people give me the old, well, we're just flesh and blood, we're here by random chance in the universe, and, we're born and we die and nothing matters. I just move on. I have nothing to say to a person like that, because I feel sorry for the fact that they can't look outside of the box and trust their own feelings, but I also respect them for being honest and logical about it. Because if it weren't for people who are trying to call others out on this kind of stuff, then nobody would think. They just believe anything they want to. And that's why, I guess to finalize this is something I mentioned the other day in a discussion with somebody. It was about science. I said, you know why I like science? Because it's limited. That's why I like it. I said, I like science not because of all the things that it can prove are not true. Such as, well, we used to believe that, human blood was made of this, or whatever it may be in history that we learned wasn't true. Or what they call phlogiston in the 1800s. They believed phlogiston was what burned when you burned something in a cone of fire. And now we understand that carbon, it oxidizes, oxygen, there you go, fire. Simple things that we now take for granted that we didn't know. We eventually learn all these things, and we learn how to sort out the things that aren't important. And so what science does in my mind is it allows me to see all the things that I might wonder about and the truth of what they really are, or at least as much as we can see through a scientific discovery. And whatever's left, I'll be in just a minute, whatever's left when we're done, whatever's unexplained by science, or the very trivial or extreme things that people are like, those are the ones that I can attach to and say, okay, this is something that science can't understand, and so I can consider that it may be something a little more to it, or a little more complex. In other words, if science backs off from something, it's the first thing I'm going to jump on, because there must be something to learn from it. And ultimately, there's always something to learn. All these philosophers and all these old thinkers, they all have something to contribute. But at the same time, they all had some very, ridiculous thoughts as well. So the most important thing is to immerse yourself in all these different ideas, and then pull yourself back out. Never get stuck believing one person. Definitely not. There's no one man who ever had the answers to life. So I guess I'm getting interrupted, so I'm going to go ahead and go. I'll talk to you all.